Hello, everybody. Nice to see you today. My name is Kim Perrone, and I'm a success coach and mindfulness trainer. And today we're going to talk about self-compassion. So, very, very important topic that doesn't get talked about enough. So, I'm going to share with you some tips and techniques, and I think it's going to make your life a lot less stressed and a lot better. Let me just bring this up. There's also a handout that probably where you got this link, you might already be looking at. So self-compassion is really a great gift that you can give yourself. It really is. So I'm going to talk about the ways, and I feel like it's what everyone needs this year for healing and for sustainability, our energy, our resolve, our adaptability, our pivoting, again, has been very much tested this year. And so we need more self-compassion, and the community needs you to be self-compassionate as well. So I want to talk about some of the people who talk a lot about self-compassion and compassion in general and who really espoused it. So Kristen Neff is the foremost researcher, and I'm going to talk to you today about some of her tips and techniques, and they're very rich. And her website is selfcompassion.org with a dash. And her website is very, very generous in giving lots of tips. So if it strikes a chord with you, I want you to go visit her website. Brene Brown wrote The Gifts of Imperfection, letting go of who you think you're supposed to be and embracing who you are. So self-compassion is an element in her guide for wholehearted living. The research shows that we actually motivate ourselves more with self-compassion than a kick in the butt. So just so you know, give you a good framework of why you want to do this. And of course you see here Mother Teresa, and Gandhi, and Martin Luther King, but they're all very, very compassionate people and icons and heroes in our history. And so they also symbolize compassion and in wanting to alleviate someone else's suffering. And when we talk about self-compassion, it's really wanting to alleviate your own suffering. And that's okay too, and it's actually advisable. So, and Karen Armstrong is a theologian, and she has written many books about all the religions and in all of the spiritual traditions. And she says compassion is it's just something that is in all of them. It's like the golden thread. So the golden thread is, do unto others as they would have done to you. And it's across cultures and in all the different religions. And we want to treat ourselves that way as well. So when it comes to self-compassion, I want to talk in terms of a few different exercises. How do you do that? Or what might you be experiencing? Again, if you're more inclined for some tough self-talk or a kick in the butt, it's maybe not the most motivating, and you could be really driving yourself too hard. And often, if we're lacking self-compassion, we're lacking compassion for other people as well. So, if we want to cultivate compassion in our lives, we need to start with ourselves. So exercise one is be a good friend to yourself. So how would you treat a good friend? Often if we think about some of our toughest self-talk, we would never say that to a good friend. I want you to start talking to yourself in a much kinder way, in a more loving way. What would you say to a good friend, especially if they were going through a difficult time, or something failed, or something broke, or something was happening that maybe wasn't ideal? Is there a difference? When you think about it, is there a difference between what you would say to another person and what you say to yourself? And I want you to start saying what you would say to the other person. And that is a simple exercise that may be very, very complicated because you may be untraining your own self-talk and you might not even be hearing it. This might be the first time you're tuning into that self-talk. So please do start to get in tune what you say to yourself in your mind. Two is self-compassion break. Take a moment. Take a moment. Recognize if you're having a moment suffering, something has gone wrong, something failed. Take a moment. Ouch, this hurts. This is stress. Just feel your feelings about it. Um, the next step, recognizing that suffering is a way of life or a part of our life, and other people have felt that way. You're probably not alone. It's probably not a very unique situation that you might be going through. And so, recognizing that it's part of life and that you are not alone. Step three, may I be kind to myself. Ask yourself, what do I need right now? You might need a break from a tough project. You might need a break in terms of a day off. You may need a break in some fresh air to clear your head. What do you need right now? You can answer that for yourself. What do you need? And then is there a word that you can tie to it? Like, what is it? Like I use the example of a break, but you might have a word. You might say, I need acceptance, or I need forgiveness, I need strength, I need patience. So this is just a 3-step exercise of taking that self-compassion break, checking in with yourself to see how you feel, recognizing how you feel. So this is a form of emotional intelligence as well. To take time for your feelings, and it might be a short amount of time because the brain wants to say, I'm too busy for this. We're too busy for this. So you aren't too busy. It's important. Exercise 3 is if you want to go a little bit deeper, explore self-compassion through writing. Actually write about imperfections that make you feel inadequate. When I mentioned Brene Brown earlier in her book, The Gifts of Imperfection, like we all have things that make us feel imperfect, and we are all perfectly imperfect. And we should address what makes us feel inadequate instead of feeling like we need to cover it up or feeling ashamed. And so we can just actually use as an exercise, just writing it out, writing things. Maybe it's something specific, it's an event, it's an occurrence. Maybe it's something long standing for you that keeps coming up. The letter can come, to you from the perspective of a loving or imaginary friend, like a loving grandmother. And or you could just write it as like a journal entry and express your feelings and really write out whatever's coming off your pen. No judgment on top of doing this exercise. Just really, really let it go. Let the page take the way you feel. And then part 3, feel the compassion as it soothes and comforts you. So as you do write that letter, and let's say it's from the perspective of what someone who loves you would say to you, feel that compassion. Take some moments for it. If you wrote it from your own perspective, acknowledge that as you're working it on the page, you're working through it. And that is a compassionate exercise in and of itself that you're writing it out, you're taking time to process your emotions. Exercise 4, now I don't need to think this is silly. Your body doesn't think it's silly. Your mind might think it's silly. But the supportive touch is something that actually has a biological, calming, and soothing impact on us. So we have what's called an sorry, it's a tongue twister, an autonomic nervous system. We have the sympathetic system that's running us mostly during the day. We have a parasympathetic, which is our calm, soothe, relaxed response. Okay. Sometimes when people have been under a lot of stress, you would think they'd fall in bed at night, but they don't. They stay awake because we become dysregulated. Because these systems go like this, right? So when the sympathetic system's, working really hard, the parasympathetic is suppressed, and vice versa. So we want to be operating evenly, but we can get dysregulated. So one of the ways we can bring that parasympathetic system up is through supportive touch. So it's like a hand on your heart like this. It could even be a hand on your cheek, something like this, cradling your face, stroking your arms, maybe a hand on your abdomen and heart, cupping your hands together in your lap, and holding your hands. So even though these seem like, well, what does this really do? The brain's like, this is silly. Well, it actually has a biological, calm, relaxing, soothing response. So it can lift your parasympathetic system up and come back to calm or soothe. And you try it out. Try it out because it actually works. So I want you to focus on trying to use exercise for even any time this week, even. Exercise 5, changing critical self-talk. So now I kind of was dabbling and thinking about, talking about getting you to think about the self-talk. Okay, so are there key phrases that come up for you routinely that are maybe not so kind? I'd like you to work on softening the inner voice, compassion rather than self-judgment. So instead of judging, labeling, oh, this is terrible, or you didn't do this right, or I never get this right, right? Soften that voice, put that compassionate edge on it. Maybe it's like, oh, yep, I have done this before. Oh, I do make this mistake all the time. Oh, I wonder what I could do to remind myself. But notice that it's like a calmer way to approach yourself, right? In a nicer, calmer, more compassionate way. Reframe any observations. If you struggle with positive statements, think about what a good friend would say. So even changing critical talk harkens back to what she says about being a good friend to yourself. Some people do struggle with coming up with positive statements towards themselves. And then that's where the work really needs to happen, to be kinder to yourself, to really make that inner voice more compassionate and feel authentic, because the really negative voice might feel authentic. Exercise 6, start a self-compassion journal and just keep your keep yourself writing daily and expressing your emotions. Again, emotional intelligence, feeling your feelings, letting them go through, not stuffing them down. That's a form of self-compassion too, recognizing that this is your life's experience, and any experiences that cause you pain, expressing them on the page. And when we do have painful things happening, we can use mindfulness in a sense of common humanity, meaning, we're not alone in this. Other people are just like me. We're just alike, and we're human beings, and this is part of the human experience. And in this level of kindness will help us process. Exercise 7, identifying what you want. Okay, think about the ways you use self-criticism as a motivator, right? It's like a good, no pain, no gain culture that we live in, right? So we think that good things need to be painful. So that might actually be why we're a little bit more critical. Or maybe someone modeled that for us in our lives, and this is how our families were very critical and judgmental, and then you just adapted that inner voice. Again, soften that. Try and soften that approach to yourself. Soften the words, soften the expression. How can you be kinder to yourself? And then every time you catch yourself being judgmental about, say, an unwanted trait, something that keeps coming up for you, or something that you feel particularly negative about, notice the pain it causes you when you think about it. Give yourself compassion. You're not alone. It's not the worst thing in the world. What would a loving, kind friend say to you? And then reframe that inner dialogue. Be more encouraging to yourself. It's a worthy exercise, and I feel like it really opens the door for so much more success and flow and optimization in life. Exercise 8. This is in situations where you may be a caregiver. So taking care of the caregiver. So this has been happening a lot this year, right? People taking care of extended family or their children, homeschooling, and just giving. And there might be a fatigue to that. So knowing that you need to recharge, how do you recharge? If we're giving, we cannot give from an empty vessel. So ultimately, at some point, we have to recharge. We have to have time off. We have to take a time out. We have to do something that's fun and exciting and energizing for ourselves, or we will not be able to keep giving to others. And then when you're overwhelmed, and from Kristen Neff in her website, selfcompassion.org, self-compassion.org, she this next one, thinking like, I know this is hard right now. I'm here for you. Saying that to yourself. She talks about how she started down the path of researching self-compassion because she really needed it. Her son was autistic and she was struggling with that and struggling to help him. And so she needed to say to herself sometimes, I didn't create this situation, but I'm doing the best I can. I know this is hard right now. I'm here for you. Speaking to herself, um, I'm doing the best I can. And for her to say, at a moment when her son was having an outburst that might have not been, she didn't feel that way. She felt judged and she felt angry at herself and thinking she didn't do the right thing. But really, she was doing the best she could in that moment. And most often, I think you'll find you are too. So any caregiver can do that too when things get very heightened, very stressed, very emotional. Um, and of course, caregivers can use any of the other exercises as well. So mindfulness and self-compassion, when we are exercising self-compassion, we are in the present moment. We are in the present moment connecting with ourselves. It helps us better regulate our emotions even later because we've been kind to ourselves. So we're not lashing out in anger or exhaustion or frustration as much as we might be if we weren't kind to ourselves. It's not self-pity or self-indulgence. So I want to debunk that right now. Self-compassion is essential and it's part of wellness and being well. And again, selfcompassion.org, if you would like even to hear some of the meditations that Christina offers, she has them right on her website. So just a couple coaching thoughts as we conclude here. Think about how you talk to yourself in your own head, that voice in your head. Just a quick note, that voice in your head is not solely you. We think it's like, well, isn't that me talking? But it's a part of you. It's your thinker, it's your problem solver. It's what we call the ego in coaching, but really your being can speak to. And when you're coming back with that loving and kind voice, that's really coming from your being. What do you feel when something goes wrong? How distressed do you get? Think of some recent examples for yourself. And what do you do when you're at the end of your rope? So no judgment on that. Think realistically about what you do, how you cope. And I hope that you can add a little more self-compassion. I'm sure there's a way to turn up the dial on self-compassion for you. And I'd like to end with this lovely quote. This is a moment of suffering. Suffering is a part of my life. May I be kind to myself in this moment. May I give myself the compassion I need is a great little mantra to keep handy by Kristen Neff. And really recognizing that there is suffering in life and that you can be kind to yourself and give yourself the compassion you need. So thank you so much for taking the time for your wellness today. Feel free to reach out and communicate to me, phone or email. My information is there for you. So would love to engage further and hear from you. Thank you. Have a great day.